Want to build a simple custom desk for your home? We'll show you how. After this. Welcome back. I'm Kyle with Adventures at Home. And if you're new here, we post new tutorial videos every week. So if you love building stuff like us, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you as a part of the adventure community. In this video, we're going to be making a custom corner desk for Ryan's room. If you've seen some of the other videos, we're working on a whole room makeover, and this is going to be another part of that project. Let's get into the video.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is lay out our boards. We obviously don't have one piece that we're going to be able to use to make the desk. And because this is going to be such an odd shape, we actually just took some 2x4s and made the exact shape of the desk that we want so we can draw the outline on the boards. For this one, we are just using 1x12 edge glued pine, and then we're going to join all of them together. So the first thing we're going to do is just trace the outline on the board so we have a rough idea of where the outline of the desk is going to lay on the boards. Now that we have our outline traced, we're going to join these boards together using a biscuit joiner. So we need to make a mark across each of the seams, and we need to go down and make the marks so we have somewhere to line our biscuit joiner up with. And you'll see that in the next step. Now we can use our biscuit joiner to cut the grooves into the boards. If you guys have never used one of these before, this is just going to place an oval shaped groove in the boards, and then we can use the biscuits, and that'll just help line the boards up while we glue these together. Now we can just put some glue in the grooves that we just cut for the biscuits, and you guys can see, if you've never used them, that is what a biscuit looks like. So once again, it's not really going to add any strength to the seams, but it is definitely going to aid in helping to line up the boards as we glue them together. So now that we have glue in them, we can drop our biscuits into place. And once you have some glue run along all the edges of the boards, you can just line the biscuits up. And then you can just clamp everything together to let the glue set. Notice how we have clamps on the top and the bottom. When you're doing a large glue up like this, if you just have clamps on one side, the boards will have a tendency to bow in the direction of whatever side you have the clamps on. Now that we let that set overnight, we can take the clamps off. And we can just scrape off any of the extra glue with a scraper. Because this is pine, I'm using a plastic scraper. And then just to get the seams close, and in case they didn't line up perfectly, we can just use a hand planer to level them out. Now we can cut the shape of our desk out using a circular saw, and notice we just clamped a straight edge down just to make sure we get a perfect cut. Now if you'll notice, what we use a lot of the time for a straight edge when cutting with a circular saw are just these store-bought melamine faced shelf boards. They work really well because they have a good depth and you can put the clamps wherever you need them, as well as they come with a perfectly square edge on them to run the circular saw against. Now this next step is just for me. If you've seen my other videos, you know I have trim that runs vertically up the walls. So I'm just going to have to cut a groove in the board in order to fit this around the trim. I don't want to cut the trim in case we have to move the desk at some point. Once we have our vertical grooves cut, we can just go back with a chisel and we can knock those out. And just for some comic relief, watch the bottom of the GoPro screen as I knock these out. It's a good thing we use a GoPro for filming stuff like this. Now we do want a curved edge to the front of this, so we're just going to take a piece of cutoff and we can use that to form a perfect curve. Shannon's kind enough to mark the curve for me once I have it marked. Sometimes it's nice being the tall one and having a very short companion. Now we can just use a jigsaw to cut along the curvature. Now we can start making the legs for the desk. We're just going to use 2x2s. Now we are going to make this desk a little bit taller than a normal desk. It's going to be a standing desk for Ryan, or it's the perfect height for a stool as well. That way we have ample storage space underneath. So we are going to cut the uprights at 36 inches and the cross members at 17. Now that we have those cut, we can apply glue, clamp everything together. And once everything is glued together, we can come back and use our pocket hole jig to put some pocket holes in. Now I'm doing these on the outside of the legs. Normally you'd see them on the inside, but I do want, because this is going to sit against the top of the desk and the floor, I can easily hide any of the joinery by doing them in this fashion. Now I'm only going to show you making one of these, but you would just repeat the process to make a second one. Once that's done, we can just unclamp it. And we can start laying out our holes, or where we need to drill the holes for joining it to the tabletop. We're going to do 3 of them. The only thing you want to make sure is that you come in far enough to miss the pocket holes that you drilled. Now we can just use the drill press to punch the holes where we have them marked. You can always just use a hand drill if that's all you have access to. We're using a 1/2 inch bit here to punch the holes. We are only using a 1/4 inch screws, and we're going to explain the reason for that in just a second. Now we can use our cutoff and we can set that right back in the front of the curve, and we can use that as the square edge to make sure that our legs are perfectly square to the front of the desk, even though it has the curve on the front. Now we can just set the depth of our drill bit to ensure that we don't go through, and we're just going to set the depth and then use a piece of masking tape to mark it so we know where to stop. Now we are going to be using T-nuts to join the legs to the top of the desk, and these will just pound into the desktop, but we did drill out the holes in the legs rather large. That way the bolts have a little bit of room to move back and forth to allow for expansion and contraction as the wood swells with the moisture content in the air. Now we could use something else such as Z-clips, but we've used T-nuts in the past for this and it's worked out pretty well. Now we can just pound our T-nuts into place. Always make sure you use a rubber mallet when you're dealing with pine, because it is such a soft wood you can dent it easily. And once again, for some comic relief, watch the GoPro. There we go. It's been a rough video on the camera. Now we can just use our truss head screws to join the legs to the top of the desk. Now we're just going to cut a 1x4 that's going to span the back legs of the desk just to give it a little bit more rigidity. It is going to be sitting in the corner, but just to prevent any bowing of the legs, we're going to put this extra board in there just for a little bit extra support. After adding some glue and clamps, we can just tack it in place. Now, because we are using the pound-in T-nuts in pine and it's soft, these do have a tendency to pull out, so I'm just going to go back with some epoxy now and cement them in permanently. We didn't do this in the first place just to give us a little bit of play, or just in case we had to move them slightly while we set everything up. Yay, the camera didn't fall that time. Now we can do some sanding. I'm going to first go over the top of everything with the hand belt sander just to level everything out. Because pine is such a soft wood, we start at 120 just so I don't have to go back and really try and remove the deep gouges that starting with 80 grit would leave. And more sanding. Thank goodness we got the foreman on watch, letting us know we're doing a good job. Now we're going to finish this with tung oil. We really want to leave the pine looking natural, just to go with the bed that we just made for his room. If you guys haven't checked that out, you should definitely check out the loft bed we made. But tung oil is a great finish, and you guys can see it leaves the wood looking natural, but really brings out the grain and gives it some depth. And we can finish the legs with tung oil as well. And let's take a look and see what the finished product looks like.
Alright, well that wraps up this video. So you guys can see the desk fits perfectly in the corner, and it looks great too. Goes really nicely with the rest of the room. And it wasn't too difficult to make. If you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, and if you want to keep seeing videos like this, make sure you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. That way you'll get notified when our next video posts. And if you want to connect with us, we're on social media. We post daily on Facebook and Instagram. We'd love to hear from you and to connect with you. And until next video, I'm Kyle, helping you create your own adventure at home.